G'day there guys, relying on miracles but never believing them, it's your main man Markee and welcome back to another episode of r/AmITheA. Now if you love today's bloody good content, sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, subscribe down below, like the video, do everything and have a good time. Posted by user, Companion Doll Am I the A-hole? Titled, Am I the A-hole for telling my friend I don't want his companion doll living with us? I'm 23 female, and my friend 24 male lost his job a few months ago, and he can't afford the rent where he lives anymore. He can afford to pay a quarter of my rent though, so I offered for him to move in with me. A few years ago, his grandfather died, and he got a good sum of money he's mostly worked through now. He bought a companion doll with this money. It's a realistic sex doll, but he talks to her and takes her around places in a wheelchair. I'm not making this up. You can look up if these exist, and I swear they're real. I try not to judge him for this, especially as a girl who has rejected him in the past. I don't want it moving in with us. It's not that he thinks it's real or anything. I don't know if I'm being unfair, but I'm uncomfortable with the entire concept, especially since it requires special place and accommodations, setting up for it at dinner, space for its wheelchair, etc. He says that him and the doll are a package deal, and me being prudish is a stupid reason to stifle his happiness. He also says it's very expensive, so he can't just throw it out, and no one will really buy a second-hand companion doll. He also accused me of being jealous of it. I admit that my main reason is just being really uncomfortable with this doll conceptually, even though it isn't hurting anyone. And it's more important that he has a place to live than me being comfortable. I still don't want to live with it though. Am I the a-hole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I mean, I'm letting the fact that I'm uncomfortable with something that genuinely isn't hurting me keep my friend from having somewhere affordable to live. Now, if I were a smarter man, I would think up different comparisons that we could do that people have in their house. For example, a bird. I may not like birds, but it genuinely isn't hurting me, and, but that could be something I don't want to live with, and that would be keeping my friend from having somewhere affordable to live in their time of need. Unfortunately, this isn't a bird, and this crosses the line for me, personally, so my judgment isn't unbiased. I'm definitely bringing my bias into this and saying I would be very uncomfortable living with someone that parades this around everywhere. Yes, it isn't hurting me, but it's making me cringe on the inside, and I want to get away from that cringe. Just like if I were to see people lugging dildos around in public, sticking them on their head and saying, hey, this is something we should bring to the dinner table. It's not something I want to see, and definitely not at the dinner table. Can we please just separate these two things? I don't blame you for enforcing this, OP. What makes me more uncomfortable is you've already denied him, and he's putting another facet of sexuality in your face. Perhaps there would be innuendos or vibes that you get from him that he still wants you, and living with him in the same space, I don't know, that you guys don't really sound compatible because of this thing. Maybe the friendship is great on the outside, but I would need more context for that, obviously. But to set a boundary with the companion doll living with you guys, I can understand why you wouldn't want that, and I'm gonna say that you're not an a-hole for asking that. In the comments, Bernabetty7 says, not the a-hole. It's a sex toy which should remain in private areas. By carting it around common areas, he's exposing his kink to people that do not want to be involved. I've asked him if he could just keep it in a closet or something, but he says that's not how their relationship works. That's why he's so specific about it being a companion doll and not a sex one. It has to accompany him everywhere. Ugh. He says it's as much of a kink as me having my boyfriend over for dinner. I think I should charge both of them rent if I let him move in at this point. Don't let him move in. It will not go well, and you will regret it. Please do not live with this cat. There is zero chance he will leave the doll in his room, even if he promises up front that he will. OP even rejected him in the past. I can almost guarantee that he will pull something like taking the doll into her bed while she's not there. This will not end well. This will either end with a fight in the best case, with cops and trauma/injury in the worst case. I'm not joking. I'm very open to kinks and special people. This is a recipe for disaster. Don't do it. I am no expert, but I have to assume that this should follow the typical kink rules, where it's only okay if everyone consents. You are not consenting to be forced to cohabitate with his huge sex toy, so not the a-hole. I think the compromise would be if it stayed in his room the entire time, so you would never have to see it or have him interact with it around you. But no, I don't think it's reasonable for him to expect you to be okay with him wheeling it around the apartment. Not the a-hole, your house, your rules. That's creepy AF. Also, don't feel any kind of way for rejecting him. You didn't cause him to have to buy a damn sex doll. Not the a-hole. Someone who can only build a relationship with an imaginary partner likely has no way to conceptualize that others have needs and wants separate from his. His partner exists to meet his needs only, and has none of her own. He never has to compromise or even listen to her thoughts because she is an object that he has full control over. The whole purpose of her existence is to remove his need to even try to understand others. How do you think that will play out when you're living together? Your comfort is more important than his. You will be paying the lion's share of the rent, and probably you will end up having to pay it all since your friend is unemployed and clearly foolish with his money. Will he then demand that you make enough food for 3 plates out of your own wages, and force you to just accept the waste as he feeds his sex toy out of your salary? How about paying to fix any damage the wheelchair causes in the apartment? Scratches and dings to the floor and walls are common. No, this situation will not end well for you. Financial and emotional health are critical, and this person will destroy yours. Posted by user AmITheA 779037. Titled, Am I the a-hole for blowing up when I found that my husband recorded my therapy session? I'm 26 female. My mum passed away in December. It was hard for me to process what happened. I have to say, me and my mum had a lot of issues between us. There's so much that I couldn't say to her, and I'm struggling with grief. My dad is deceased, and my mum was my remaining parent, and growing up, I had many issues with her. I went no contact with her several times, then I reconnected with her. Then we'd get into an argument again, and the same thing happened. I feel bad for not trying enough to fix the situation. I keep getting shamed by family members asking if I'm happy now that my mum is gone, but how can someone be happy when their mother passes away? I'm a mess, plus I'm 5 months pregnant after 2 miscarriages, and it's been difficult. I started therapy 2 weeks ago. It's online therapy. I go into the bedroom, and I have my session with my therapist. I ask my husband not to come into the room or interrupt after he insisted he wanted to be in the room but wasn't allowed. He then started coming in several times, just barging in, bringing me coffee or water, but I know it's a way for him to hear something. I got annoyed, and I told him he was causing me so much stress, and he stopped coming into the room. 2 days later, my husband stopped asking me questions all of a sudden, stopped insisting on being in the room, stopped interrupting my sessions, and I thought he finally got it. But yesterday, as I was doing some cleaning, I heard my own voice coming from the bedroom. I was puzzled, and I walked into the bedroom and found my husband with his phone on his ear, listening to my voice. I then realized that he recorded my voice during my therapy session and was playing the recording. I asked him, and he said that it was nothing. Then he admitted it was a recording of my therapy session. I lost it. I blew up, and I started yelling at him. He told me to calm down, and that it was no big deal, and that he was just curious to know and wanted to also figure out what my problem is and maybe help out. I told him it wasn't his place, and just because we're married doesn't mean he can disrespect me and be inconsiderate of my feelings. This is a very important thing to me, and he kept saying I'm sorry, but I just couldn't help it. I was infuriated. There were things between my mum and I that I find hard to talk about, and I found what he did disrespectful. I walked out, and he kept saying I overreacted and that he's not a stranger. He's my husband. So I went to stay with my sister, who said I was harsh on him and shouldn't have reacted this way. He apologized and said he already deleted it. Even said that I can take a few days to stay with my sister to calm down after he saw how much I was mad. I should mention that he mentioned several times that he was worried about me because I haven't been talking to him much. And I understand he was worried, but that's not an excuse. Information: I'm sorry I forgot to mention my husband's age. He's 31. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I'm an a-hole for yelling and reacting like that without a conversation, but I was livid and I couldn't believe he'd resort to that and disrespect me like that. I think you're well within your rights to be pissed off and yelling at him for that. That's a complete intrusion and destruction of your privacy. If he doesn't get to see these emotions come out of you and see how pissed off you are and see how upset all of this made you, he's not going to change his ways and he's not going to understand why you didn't want him in the room, why you didn't want him hearing that, why you wanted your own privacy. What's done is done and shouldn't have happened in the first place, and I think it was expected of you to blow up and react like that because he needs to learn and he needs to understand that you need that privacy. And to everyone listening, I'm sorry that I've repeated myself like this, but sometimes with guys, you just have to keep repeating the message until it gets through their heads. I'm one, and I know what that's like. It's frustrating and we shouldn't have to do it, but you do because it doesn't work otherwise. OP is justified for yelling and reacting like that, and they're not an a-hole for doing so. I feel like anyone else in this situation would do the same. Not the a-hole. In the comments, It's Solly Boy says, not the a-hole. Red flags here, red flags there, here, there, red flags everywhere. Edit. Jesus Christ, people, I get that red flags are a stereotype on this sub, but does it really make me such a hive-minded freak to point out a clear problem? I'm not saying OP needs to break up with her significant other, I'm just saying this story indicates problems that need addressing. How generous of him to give her a couple days to calm down after he violated her therapy. This is bad, OP. Yes, and calm down by her going to the inconvenience of moving to her sister's for a few days, rather than him giving her space and making his own arrangements. What a generous, thoughtful guy. Satire. I noticed that too. He should be the one moving out, and only coming back once he realized the magnitude of this violation of OP. Scratch that, only coming back once OP has decided she's okay with him coming back. Not the a-hole. Your husband is a massive a-hole though. What got to me was when he kept repeating, I'm sorry, but I just couldn't help it. A version of those words was said to me by my ex-husband. When I had finally had enough of his emotionally abusive behavior, I told him I wanted a divorce. He countered in a bid to change my mind and apologize. I knew I was being mean to you, I just couldn't help myself. At that moment, it felt like the world stopped, became dead silent, and I could hear a record screech. I looked into my ex's eyes and realized very chillingly that I had no idea who the hell I married. The fact that he had no issue whatsoever in being cruel to me and justifying it that he just couldn't help himself scared the living crap out of me. I understood very clearly that this man was a danger to me and I needed to get gone. It's been 10 years, and to this day, I will never forget what he said because at that moment he revealed exactly who he was. Your husband is the same way, OP. He has just shown you exactly who he is. He has no respect for you. His claim that he wants to help you is a lie. He wants to know what makes you tick so he can use that information to manipulate you in the future. A true partner does not disregard the other's boundaries, does not surreptitiously record a private conversation, and most importantly, he wasn't planning on being caught. This man is giving you a clear picture of what the future holds should you stay. It took me 13 years to leave my ex. Please don't waste your life looking over your shoulder at what the next thing your husband will do. And Be More Sky and Sea says, Oh, hell no. Let's see here. Ignored your boundaries when you asked him for privacy, continued to ignore your boundaries when you reiterated, only stopped interrupting or trying to listen when he secretly recorded your private session with your therapist, and still hasn't apologized and is 1. Telling you to calm down, 2. Saying that you overreacted, and 3. Presents himself as the good guy because he's trying to help. OP, schedule a session with a therapist immediately and talk over how you are going to establish boundaries if you choose to remain in this marriage. This is a huge violation. Your sister is also an a-hole for questioning your reaction. He R-worded your innermost thoughts. He ignored your no's and pushed ahead without consent for emotions that you did not willingly give him. You are not the a-hole, and I hope you can find a safe place to gather your emotions, talk to your therapist, and determine your next steps. Unless your husband does a 180 and recognizes that he was 100% in the wrong here and has a lot of fixing of himself, you should get out now. Posted by user NoBit7970. Titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my stepdaughter that she isn't allowed to order food when we go to restaurants anymore? This sounds bad, but hear me out. My stepdaughter is an absolute pain in the neck when it comes to food. She has legitimate and not mild allergies, but most of them aren't common things. So every single meal at a restaurant, no matter what she would get, would need several modifications. With so many special requests, something is always going to be wrong. I understand that. My wife understands that, and probably on some level, she does too. But it's an entire event every time. She ends up acting like the restaurant is personally trying to kill her. She, of course, has to send it back, but spirals into a breakdown and won't eat whatever they bring back anyway because it isn't safe, regardless of what the truth is anymore. It makes the entire meal a nightmare for everyone, including the restaurant workers. The younger kids end up having their food go cold because they can't eat with the drama going on, and they don't know what to do. I finally broke and told her and my wife, while we were all together as a family, that she would just have to stop getting food when we went out, and that she needs to just wait until we get home. Restaurants don't like having people bring outside food. I think it looks really rude anyway, and she just eats later at home anyway due to these episodes. Not only that, but it's expensive as hell for her to do this. Basic meals that would comply are already not cheap, and it creates so much food waste, which I absolutely hate. My wife says that I don't understand what it's like to have to navigate food when you just can't deal with it like everyone else, and a slight mistake can land you in the hospital, and that this makes her feel like she's less than and not part of the family. I just want to stop wasting money and food and have more quiet meals. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. She is from my wife's first marriage, so maybe I don't have as much sympathy for this as I should, and maybe this is just another cost of having another child, which she is. You put that very bluntly, but that paints a dark picture of you, OP. It really doesn't seem like you have much sympathy for this child because they cause so many inconveniences for you. And it also seems you have less sympathy because they're not your biological child, so why should you care? Yes, you're correct in the fact that this is just another cost of having another child, and you have to cater for that child. Yes, this causes a scene, and this causes drama at dinner times, but that's also the fault of the restaurants not making the meals too standard. I don't understand why you're victim blaming the child here. The child is just trying to eat with the family at a restaurant and not die in the process. Why should they be expected to starve while everyone else around them is eating and having a good time, and they can't enjoy the meal like the rest of the family? Life sucks when you have to have allergies that cater to you that will not kill you, but that's a reality for a lot of people. Have some more sympathy and have some respect for this family that you've married into, OP. You're the a-hole. In the comments, Lily Moskovitz says, "You're the a-hole. Are you effing kidding me? The girl has legit food allergies which could kill her, and rather than taking the time to review publicly available allergen information on restaurant websites, calling in advance, or finding a restaurant that can accommodate her, Your solution is that she sit there and watch everyone eat? She didn't choose to have food allergies or the resultant anxiety around it. You, however, are choosing to be a monumental a-hole. Edit. I have kids with opposite food allergies. There is literally 3 restaurants we frequent as a family because I would never put either of them in this situation. And one of those restaurants is an hour away with no parking, but it's top 8 free and they can order anything at all with complete peace of mind. I cannot fathom this crap. There are other things to do on a family outing but eat. If they don't want to cook, they can order in and let her eat her own food. They don't have to go out to a restaurant, drag her along, resent her for inconveniencing them with her trauma from the past accidental poisonings, and forbid her to eat. What the actual F? It's all about him, his convenience, his high and mighty hatred of food waste, and the effect on his wallet. Ugh, can't she just learn not to be allergic? Or at least have the decency to ingest her allergens and be at death's door quietly, so he can eat at a restaurant in peace? Ugh, the audacity of this girl. Satire. You're the a-hole. I just want to stop wasting money and food and have more quiet meals. End quote. Then save the restaurants for date nights with your wife or one-on-one outings with the other kids and have the family meals at home, or do the research in advance and find places that can accommodate her, instead of getting mad at her when it turns out they're not prepared to deal with something like this. You're the a-hole. While I understand it's annoying, 1. It's completely unfair to make her go with you to just sit there and watch everyone else eat, and 2. If she has to send her food back multiple times because they keep messing it up, well, that's not her fault. If she tells them plainly, or you or your wife do, what needs to be taken off and stuff, they should be able to do it in 1 or 2 requests, not several. If she Fs up every single time, something is wrong with how she is doing it or approaching it. People with special diets can get it right, and I'm not blaming the daughter because she's 14. Opie and his wife need to teach her. And it sounds like eating out is a nightmare for everyone. Why do they keep doing it? Honestly, dude, I'm allergic to eggs, which is a super common allergy, and yet most of the times when I mod something to get rid of the egg ingredients, one of them, usually mayo, still makes it onto the dish at least 70% of the time. My allergy isn't extreme. The mayo will upset my stomach a bit, but I don't start getting violently ill until I've had a full egg or so I don't bother sending it back most of the time. That being said, if my extremely common allergy gets messed up despite telling them I'm allergic so often, I kind of doubt it's her just ordering it wrong. If my order of chicken club with no mayo, I have an egg allergy, still gets me mayo on my chicken club so often, I can easily see more obscure allergies getting missed the majority of the time. Posted by user MumsyWo, titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my wife, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, after she complained about my mum? So my mum can be kind of horrible. My wife and I make the conscious decision not to go no contact. She has a difficult family too, and no contact isn't worth it to us. She's always been catty towards my wife and my stepbrother's wife when they were married, but she treats the only son-in-law like a god. 6 months ago, we all went on vacation, and my wife and our then sister-in-law were drinking and decided to prank my mother. They egged and floured her, and yes, it was immature, but I thought it was great. My mum was pissed, but everyone in the house was super proud of them. Well, sister-in-law is out of the picture now, and we spent the weekend at my mum's vacation house. My wife went to bed early, and I was hanging out with my stepbrother. My mum decided it was payback time and poured maple syrup on my wife, and then threw a mixture of feathers and glitter at her. I'm less inclined to find this funny because glitter is the devil, but payback is a beer. My wife was hysterical and screaming at my mum. My stepdad told her to grow up and that she started it. My wife wanted me to be mad at my mum, and I said she played a stupid game and won a stupid prize. Now she's mad at me for not supporting her. I'm inclined to say not the a-hole because you're just poking fun at them and, you're not really doing anything particularly wrong in this situation, but it's clear that you're being childish and playing the game just as much as they are. So for that, I guess that makes you an a-hole just as much as each other there? But really, this doesn't seem all too crazy. This seems like pretty tame as far as pranks go. So I guess it's everyone sucks here, leaning towards not the a-hole. In the comments, Piledriver says, everyone sucks here. Your mum does not sound like the only toxic person here. You and your wife are quick to criticize her, but are also happy to enjoy the vacation house. A prank war might feel cathartic in the moment, but it's not going to make things better in the long run. I think everyone needs to take a step back and assess how their own actions are contributing to this dynamic. OP barely mentions the vacation house. In fact, the way I read it is they enjoyed the holiday and the rest of the family, but not necessarily the mum or all of the house. They also didn't help with either of the pranks and were saying their wife started it and implied she should stop it too. OP also says that his mum acts catty towards his wife and former sister-in-law. OP praised his wife's actions initially and said she was great and that everyone in the house was super proud of her. Then, when his mother exhibits the same behavior, OP acts like he is above it all and that his wife's initial behavior exists in a vacuum that has nothing to do with him. OP has no interest in improving this dynamic and is content to egg, no pun intended, things on from the sidelines. Everyone sucks here. All of you have to stop being immature. Yeah, what the hell, sounds like a secondary school with all the pranks and stupid immature behavior. And Michael Chandra says, so you loved them assaulting your mother, and you loved your mother assaulting her. Everyone sucks here. Congrats. Y'all deserve each other. Yep, OP, a lot of critique for your wife and mum deserved, but you're also very much an a-hole here. You can't egg on and praise your wife 1 minute, then leave her to be the one who takes the really unpleasant fall while you back off and call out stupid games from some high horse you just found. Posted by user A55709CK. Titled, Am I the a-hole for calling the police after my brother told me to go pick his son up from the supermarket parking lot? So my, male 33, brother, male 37, has a 12-year-old son, my nephew. Ever since my brother started dating again, he's been dropping my nephew off at my place to stay for days. I didn't have a problem with that, but I had work, and my living situation didn't allow me to watch kids. Everyone in the family doesn't help, and my brother uses this excuse to dump my nephew on me and go out for dinners, parties, and holidays. I was getting tired of his one last favor I promise nonsense. I tried to find a solution. I yelled at him, I blocked him, I called him a bad father, but he just doesn't care. And with his girlfriend in the picture, the issue got bigger, obviously. I found myself feeding, cleaning, and helping with homework and taking them to school. I felt like I was my nephew's dad. I was only doing it for my poor nephew, but I decided enough is enough. My brother begged me to watch my nephew for 2 weeks so he and his girlfriend can go to a winter resort to snowboard and ice skate and enjoy the mountains and the fresh air. I said no. I have plenty of work and I can't take my nephew in. My brother insisted for days and kept begging, again saying no one wants to help or take responsibility. I decided to ignore his calls and hope that he'll stop. Yesterday, I grabbed some coffee and went to work immediately because I was late and I already had a long day ahead of me. I got a text from my brother telling me he and his girlfriend just left for their vacation and that he dropped my nephew at X supermarket and I should go pick him up and take him home with me. I was absolutely stunned. I kept reading the text over and over. I was so damn angry he started calling, I decided to text him no and wait, hoping he'll realize this was a bad idea and turn around and pick his son up. Or have another family member pick him up. But 15 minutes later, a massive amount of missed calls and texts from family calling me names, telling me that it's my fault that my nephew was waiting at the supermarket parking lot and demanded I go pick him up and take him to my house, I lost it. I called the local police anonymously and reported that there was a kid left in the parking lot. Next thing I knew, the police took my nephew. My brother came back and cancelled the trip and was being questioned along with his girlfriend. My mum and the family are livid, saying it was my fault and I should have picked up my nephew now I caused my brother trouble. Claiming my brother already took my word and thought I agreed to take my nephew, but I showed them the texts that he deleted, which made my brother more guilty. My family call me an a-hole when they wouldn't take my nephew in, but expect me to do that, despite helping for so long. To add info, my nephew's mother is deceased. My brother had a girlfriend who was a very generous and kind person, but she left in 2020. Now he's with his current girlfriend, who in my opinion is a toxic person and irresponsible. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I think what I did was harsh and my brother is having issues now, but I literally couldn't take it. Especially after the family kept blaming me, basically saying it's my fault, as if I'm responsible for my nephew more than his own dad. I'm genuinely having a hard time grasping the outrageous victim blaming going on here from someone who is not the father of this child. How can you do that? How can you drop your kid off to the supermarket knowing that you're pissing someone off that doesn't have to look after the kid? That seems like a major disconnect from reality and absolute child abuse, neglect, and abandonment. I genuinely would be surprised if this kid didn't grow up with issues from the father continuously putting him on the back burner, chucking him to other people because he doesn't want to look after the kid. And I would hope that the family is protecting the kid from that realization, but, kids pick up on a lot. That's so sad, and no, OP's not the a-hole for doing it. They called the police, they made sure the kid's fine. This is a boundary that was continuously crossed and spat on. Something eventually has to give. OP can't be expected to continuously be looking after a child that isn't his. Not the a-hole. In the comments, Griffin Raw says, "Not the a-hole. You helped when you could. You couldn't, and your brother decided to call your bluff and abandon his child because he just had to take a 2-week holiday with his new girlfriend, who is also a massive a-hole for letting this happen. Just because your brother doesn't want to be a dad doesn't mean you have to step up for him time and time again. You did the right thing. That kid needs a solid home life." And OP says, "I'm honestly getting criticism from my family saying it's my fault. But how's that my fault when it was my brother who literally created this issue and decided to once again override my decisions and force me to take my nephew in? His girlfriend has the nerve to actually talk about what a terrible brother I am just for saying no. I can only imagine what she thinks of me now." OP, please take this to heart, because you really, really need to remember this and remind your family of this. You did not leave your nephew alone at a supermarket, your brother did. Your nephew would not have been in this situation if it were not for your brother's actions. What if you were in a meeting and couldn't check your phone? What if your phone was dead? What if you had your phone on Do Not Disturb and didn't check it for a couple of hours? Screw it. What if you were in an accident on your way to work and in the hospital? There were so many things that could have prevented you from getting to your nephew. You told your brother no. You told him you were busy, and when he told you he abandoned his child at the supermarket, you said you would not get him, and he still didn't go back for him. He's bloody lucky his kid is okay. You were nowhere near the a-hole. Shestami says, "Block all family members blaming you. They're unreasonable, and your brother is beyond irresponsible. He deserves to have his kid removed permanently. The untold emotional damage he's doing due to the frequent abandonment must be enormous. I feel terribly for the 12-year-old. As for you, you absolutely did the right thing, and hopefully this poses a huge wake-up call to your brother, not the a-hole." The emotional damage he's creating is called post-traumatic stress disorder of abandonment. I know because it happened to me, and I've been dealing with several issues my whole life because of it. It's horrible. I hope someone helps the kid get professional help ASAP. PTSD of abandonment is a very serious condition. I seriously can't even begin to imagine how this is going to F the kid up for the rest of his life. He needs to be shown that he is loved ASAP. OP has been the only reliable family figure in his life. You are so not the a-hole, OP. Your brother, on the other hand, deserves punishment for child abandonment and neglect to the fullest extent of the law. Your family also sucks for enabling him. It's so ridiculous that they don't see their own hypocrisy. If you're to step up and care for your nephew, where the hell are they? How can they reasonably expect you to contribute when they've ignored the problem themselves? Ugh. Send this post to your family and then go no contact. Edit. He's your older brother too? The man is almost 40 and gallivanting around like this? I seriously can't imagine he'll get his act together. If anything... Oh my god, Siri just activated, Jesus Christ. If anything, I worry he's going to resent your nephew and mistreat him further. I'm normally an optimist, but crappy parenting tends to make me expect the worst in people. Posted by user South to West Confused. Titled, Am I the a-hole for talking about things from the South when I moved to California that resulted in several co-workers calling me a racist and reporting me to HR? Throwaway here. I'll make this quick. Me, 24 male, raised for most of my life in the southern US, politically middle of the road, probably lean a little left, half white, half Egyptian, so light-skinned. Relevant later. Think Rami Malek, or Malik, I don't know, he's just so sexy in that latest movie. I moved from the southern US to Cali about 6 months ago. I have a pretty noticeable southern accent. I started work in my field, office job, when I got there. I moved for 2 reasons. Job, and I wanted to get away from the super conservative area I lived in. Office is pretty large and pretty diverse as far as racially. Now on to the story. Co-workers and I were discussing camping. Was a fun talk until mosquitoes were brought up. One co-worker said something to the effect of, I always get bit and itch for days. They're the worst. I then said, mosquitoes are easy. We have redacted word I can't say that, and they're millions times worse if you get a bunch of them. Tiny bug makes you itch for days to weeks. It's awful. They're all over the South. We finished the conversation and everyone went back to work. Next day, I was pulled into HR with several of my co-workers to try and mediate an issue. One black and one white co-worker that were a part of the camping talk had reported me for being racist. They say any word near the N-word is racist, and because I'm white, I can't use that term as it's so close. That words are what everyone calls them. I told my side of the story and also informed them I was half Egyptian, which I phrased as I was born in Africa to a white mum and an Egyptian dad, which is relevant in a minute. Here is where I might have been the a-hole. HR basically said it doesn't look like a problem after Googling the insects in question, and it's a misunderstanding. I asked my co-workers if we couldn't throw the race card around, and just because I'm light-skinned and have a southern accent doesn't mean I'm a racist. They both basically started apologizing like crazy, saying they didn't know, etc., etc. Basically, I pulled the race card, asking them not to, but I feel mine was justified. What do y'all think? I would like to think that this is definitely, a situation where it can be not the a-hole, and by the context, cultural context, historical context that OP has given, they are of African descent. They were raised in the South, that's what everyone called them. I feel like in this context it's at least socially acceptable. Would we blame a native Mandarin speaker for what they say when they're trying to fill in the gaps like we do with English? When we say they say a word very similar to that one to fill in the gaps that's not Would we also report them to HR for being racist if we were in the same situation in a California office space? I think that OP did pull the race card in this situation, but I think it was an acceptable use of it because it's like, you activated my trap card. Obviously that's satire, that's definitely satire, that is satire. But personally, I think those co-workers were the only ones with an issue here. OP wasn't being overtly racist, they weren't being an a-hole, they were just identifying a creature by the name that they know it as. HR agrees with OP that they were not being racist and it was just a misunderstanding. So I think, OP is not the a-hole. I'm inclined to go no a-holes here, but I want to go not the a-hole because that's my gut feeling. In the comments, St. Elvis says, not the a-hole. I've never lived south of the Mason-Dixon line, and those things are still a term I'm well familiar with. Right? Everyone calls them like that east of Oklahoma. Not the a-hole. Who the hell hasn't heard of them? I was born and raised in California, lived there until after college. There's mountains and hiking, and sure as hell there are those insects. Not to the extent that there are in the south, but they're there. Edit, so I'm gonna say that I'm the a-hole for assuming this critter was common knowledge, when that clearly isn't the case. As so many others have noted, that even though they'd never heard the term, they understood from context that it was an insect of sorts. Today I learned those little idiots are everywhere. I met a guy with that nickname once. I learned very quickly it's because he's so annoying that everything he does just gets under your skin. The nickname didn't even bother the poor guy. So instead of asking what they are, they assumed you were saying something close to the N-word? While you guys were talking about insects. What the hell? Not the a-hole. Worse, it almost sounds like they knew what it meant, but in their wokeness, have decided that any word near the N-word is racist. Near, as in, just sounds a little like. It's disingenuous at best. Social pressure. Once one person calls something racist, everyone has to agree or be called racist themselves, even if they don't actually believe it. And Funky Orange Penguin says, not the a-hole. I learned a new word today, but I definitely didn't assume that it was a racist term. Reporting you to HR before thinking of Googling it definitely makes them the a-hole. Agreed on that, but I was the a-hole for emphasizing being born in Africa and being a person of color, basically asking them not to pull the race card. I still feel a bit bad, lol. When someone is falsely accusing you of being a racist, if using your POC status to defend yourself is the way to get out of it, hell yeah. Especially in the context of work where these things get people fired. Using your race card to defend yourself if you had used an actual racist word would be an a-hole move. Agreed on that. Thanks. I definitely don't use the N-word. Even though I'm technically African, I don't because it's not an Egyptian thing. It's for other African countries, so I don't use it. Just like I wouldn't want a Kenyan using Egyptian and Arab slurs, like we do with each other. Posted by user Throwaway Wow Foodman. Titled, Am I the a-hole for leaving my wife outside without keys while I played World of Warcraft? Okay, I realize the title sounds awful, but I think context is super important here. I play World of Warcraft Classic, and in this game, you get a group of 40 people together to kill bosses in a joint effort, and when the bosses die, they drop items that your characters can use. It's called raiding. Each boss can only be killed once a week, so once a week, my guild and I get together to raid. An aspect of World of Warcraft Classic is something called world buffs. These are stat increases you can get for your character in order to make them do more damage, have more health, regenerate more mana, etc. And they're a real beer to get. They occur all over the very large game world on set schedules and at very specific times. For example, One of the buffs is on a 7-ish hour cooldown and can only be given when one person turns in the head of a slain dragon, and this can only be done once per character. Coordinating world buffs is so intense and ridiculous, there are entire Discord servers that exist simply to let people know when they are going to happen. What this means is that, in order to prepare for a raid, I have to spend a significant amount of time collecting these buffs for my character, and our raid leader, the guy in charge, requires them in order to get an invitation to the raid. Oh, and if you die, that's it. You lose them. On to what happened. My wife and I live in a major city and had ordered food delivery. Our building is small, only one other unit, and it has a vestibule of the kind where if a door closes behind you, it locks. Typically, when we order delivery and the doorbell rings, I go downstairs to collect the food. But on the night in question, we were preparing for a particularly difficult boss encounter. They last 5 to 7 minutes, and if you don't do the mechanics properly, you'll die and lose the buffs, and potentially cause all 39 other players to die too. So right as we start the encounter, the doorbell rings, and she goes downstairs to get the food. As she was leaving, I told her to not forget her keys, but she did. So, after collecting the food, she was stuck in the vestibule with no way back into the apartment. Here is where I might be the a-hole. This happens occasionally, hence why I told her to not forget her keys. When it does, my wife rings the doorbell in order to let me know she's stuck. On this occasion, when the doorbell rang, I ignored it until the boss encounter was over, perhaps 5 minutes or so. She was really upset and told me I was a huge a-hole and that I was choosing video games over her, but she also knows that there is a huge time investment leading up to that 5-minute encounter. It's not like she was unsafe. The front door was locked and it wasn't cold in there. She just had to wait 5 minutes and then I went to go and get her. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Edit. Well, this looks to be a tremendously controversial topic. I want to address some of the common questions. Why did you spend so much time talking about the game and not your wife? This is not a signal that I don't love my wife or that I think the game is more important than her. I believed, and still believe, that the context of the situation is important here. If you aren't going to read through that explanation and snap judge me, you can F right off. Have you ever thought about this before? No, not once. How much time do you spend playing the game outside of the raids? Raid times are 2 to 3 hours once a week, and I probably play another 5 or so hours during the week to prepare materials, get the buffs I talked about, etc. All of this usually happens when she's doing her own hobby. Was she unsafe and uncomfortable? Not in the least. The vestibule is climate controlled, and we know the other couple who live here. The front door was locked from the outside, and she could have gone outside if she needed to. And this is how she used the doorbell. And she doesn't get claustrophobic or anxious. Why couldn't she just hit your buzzer to let her back in? Our building doesn't have a buzzer. This is why she had to go downstairs in the first place. I would have had to go down both flights of stairs to get her, then back up, which would 100% have caused me to die, and maybe others. I think depending on your situation and how you've lived your life up into this point, you could either be a not the a-hole or you're the a-hole type. I think there is quite a good reason that WoW gets the backlash that it does, because it does become all-consuming for a lot of people and causes problems in relationships like this. For this one instance, if it's the only time that it's ever happened and will happen again, I can see a not the a-hole judgment happening. She agreed to this and she understands that it won't take that long. But the way you've phrased it, it seems like there's more going on under the surface and you're trying to throw as much on top with these edits and get us to, agree with you here. WoW does become an addiction, and it's an addiction to the game, and it's an addiction to the community, and that community continually sucks you in and pushes you away, and, throws you through a roller coaster. Unfortunately, because I do have a feeling that this is the tip of the iceberg in events and feelings and your relationship, I'm going to have to go with you're the a-hole, because you had to justify yourself so much, and if you were so sure of yourself, you wouldn't need to justify that much. So I'm going to have to go with you're the a-hole. In the comments, Dreaming Potatoes says, "This particular episode is not so bad, but the fact that you take this game so seriously suggests that when your wife says you choose games over her, she might have a point. This particular episode might be the straw that broke the camel's back. You're the a-hole." I'm a former WoW widow. I didn't invent the phrase. It took a while to get my husband to realize that our family can't live our life around a video game. Because of the WoW widow mention, I would like to add that my father wasn't present in my life because he was always playing WoW. This still hurts me to this day, and every memory I have of him is him in that damned computer playing this godforsaken game. And if you're half as dedicated a WoW player as he was, then your wife probably feels neglected, and this one incident was the one that pinched her last nerve. I had the same problem. All my dad ever did growing up was play WoW. I looked at the back of his head a lot. He doesn't play anymore because my mum threatened a divorce after almost 10 years of him gaming for hours a day. I can almost guarantee that this is a pattern for OP, and I wonder if the 5 minutes really was only 5 minutes. My dad had no concept of time when he was playing. As a former WoW addict, I can't think of any vanilla/classic bosses that can be downed in 5 minutes, even for a full max level, fully geared and buffed raiding party. Plus, there's usually some kind of dungeon that comes before the boss. You're the a-hole. So, out of curiosity, how long does it take a DoorDash driver to murder your wife in the vestibule? Asking for a friend. Is it more or less than 5 minutes? Edit. Good lord, y'all. I made a hyperbolic statement designed to illustrate that bad things can happen, and when someone asks for help, maybe you help them? I'm not saying she's guaranteed to get murdered, or taken advantage of, or that she can't defend herself. Who knows? Maybe there are bees out there. Maybe she's a ninja. Would it have made you feel better if I said there were werewolves? The bottom line is the same. The point is, she tried to get in, and he ignored her. I don't care who it is in my family, if they're trying to get into my house, I'm not going to make them sit out there while I do whatever. That's just rude. Maybe in your family you leave loved ones locked out. It just doesn't happen in my family. You do you. Or, even more likely, another guy in the building sees a woman trapped in there and lets her in. She complains her husband couldn't come down to get her because he's busy playing a video game. The guy says, "Wow, I'm sorry you have to deal with that. Well, I'm in 2B, and here's my number. Next time this happens, just call me. I'll be there for you." And you can see where it goes from there. If your partner is going to just go off with some random dude because she's had to wait 5 minutes, it's probably better to know so that you can get rid of her. Are you the kind to instantly try and get in the pants of any woman in distress that you see? I see it going from there that she remembers the keys next time or gets some kind of door lock. You're the a-hole, but not a big one. Look, I game too, and I understand that it doesn't always align with real life, but I feel this is going deeper than just this one time. As much as we all like to think that games aren't temporary, they mostly really are. And sure, games help to make friends all over the world, but it should never be more important than real people in your real life. Just like you said, you told her to take the keys with her because it's something that happens more often. That's not something you want to bring into and keep into your relationship. It's a breeding ground for bad memories. Believe me, you're really not going to miss raiding all that much. But if your partner is unhappy and you continue to ignore your partner might leave. And that's really going to make a lasting impact. You've got somebody to tackle this life with together, and that's really precious. I'm not saying gaming isn't fun or an enjoyable, possibly lasting experience, but you always got to keep in mind who and what is really important in your life. Posted by user Can't Be That Healthy, titled, Am I the a-hole for making myself nice meals and not my husband? So I'll preface by saying me and my husband have vastly different tastes in basically everything. For the most part, it doesn't matter, but we clash heavily when it comes to food. Before we met, I basically never ate out, drank nothing but water and unsweet tea, with the occasional juice, and ate mostly vegetarian, always pretty healthy meals. When we started dating, I started eating out a lot more because that's what he always wanted to do, and I'm honestly easily influenced. I learned pretty quickly that he doesn't like anything that includes other than a variation of cheese, meat, and starch, rice, bread, pasta, potatoes. Not a single vegetable other than corn. No dairy except butter, no fruits, no grains, nothing. He also hates a majority of seasonings. I ended up adapting my cooking to suit his tastes, occasionally making myself healthy sides, but it bothered him, so I mostly stopped. I tried to at least have healthy lunches or choose healthier options when eating out, which was still regularly. Eventually, we had a daughter, and now that she's getting old enough to eat with us, I'm pretty much done with how we eat. I don't like eating like this. I've gained weight and feel out of shape, my body feels awful, whatever. And I don't want our daughter to grow up not eating anything healthy and substantial. So I stopped agreeing to fast food and made him only get it for himself and started cooking nice meals again. Which he, of course, hates. I've begged him to at least try and find something remotely healthy he likes eating. Quite frankly, my food doesn't even taste healthy. Our friends and family rave about how delicious it is, even when it has the stuff they normally don't like in it. It really shouldn't be that hard, but he refuses, so I told him he can make his own meals if he doesn't like ours, that I'm tired of eating unhealthy all the time. He accepted it at first, but he's gradually been getting more upset about it. He says it's not fair that we have to have these nice meals and he's stuck eating crap. I told him he's free to join, and what he's making himself is literally the same things I'd make for him anyways, minus some fancier things, and that I'd be willing to still make some of the fancier ones, just not so often. But he says it's not the same, and he wants nice healthy meals like ours, and it's not fair that he's being excluded. I told him unless he's willing to let me add spices and vegetables to the meals, I literally can't make him nice healthy meals like ours. There's only so many ways you can make a meal with just meat and starch, and you can only make it so healthy. Now he's been pouting because he says it's not fair that he's the only one who doesn't get good food, and that I could at least try and include him, and I'm being an a-hole by not trying. I think he's being ridiculous to expect the same type of food we eat without me putting in literally any of the ingredients. Am I the a-hole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I might be the a-hole because it probably feels like I'm rubbing in the fact that we're all eating nice meals while he eats his simple ones. I hate to be the negative Nancy here, OP, but why did you have a kid with this man? Did you not have a sinking feeling during this entire relationship where you're like, this could possibly go bad and he's not going to change his ways and I'm not happy eating like this forever? Yes, I'm an a-hole for saying the truth here, but this is what has happened in this situation, and I question why you didn't sit down with him and explain that this is what was going to happen. I'm not having a kid until we're clear on what the future holds. I understand that that isn't reality for a lot of people, and that's completely acceptable. I will read r/relationship posts to the day I die, where these things continue to happen. Some people escape and some don't. Anyway, moving on from that, the situation as it stands currently is very unhealthy in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally. If he can't grasp that he can make his own meals because you've made it very clear you will not continue to facilitate and enable this diet that is not working out for you, then that's a him problem that he needs to solve. It honestly does feel like you've been very clear with him about what was going to happen, how he needs to facilitate the meals himself, how you don't really have a problem with it, you just won't be continuing it. He's the one that's struggling to accept that reality, he's the one with the issue, and I don't know what to say about it, besides the fact that you're not the a-hole. In the comments, Haraden says, "Not the a-hole. His real complaint is that he's being excluded, which I suspect is actually a combination of resentment at having to cook for himself, and resentment that you're implicitly teaching your kid that the way he eats is bad. Like, look at what you wrote. He was only okay with things when you completely adopted his way of cooking. Even you making yourself healthy sides bothered him to the point where you stopped doing it. You've given him option after option after option in terms of compromises, but the only thing he actually wants is total capitulation to his preferences. You shouldn't feel bad about what you're doing, and certainly shouldn't give in to his pity party. I saw that too and was confused. Like, you aren't even allowed a side of steamed broccoli because it offends him? That sounds controlling. OP replies, I think he hates me eating fancy stuff without him. Basically anything that's not plain, although apparently seeing me eat vegetables also grosses him out. Like for broccoli, I usually bake it, then toss it with some lemon, parmesan, salt, and pepper, or say spiced carrots and parsnips, which are also baked after being tossed with olive oil, salt, pepper, cumin, allspice, paprika, and chili powder. Oh my god, that sounds like heaven. He sees it as fancy, so it upsets him. So, you've got 2 children, is what I'm hearing. Like, he can't even see you eat vegetables? I don't care if he's the best lover on the planet. I truly wouldn't be able to sleep with someone who had such an infantile aversion. I know we're only hearing one example of this behavior, but this sub often makes me wonder why some people got married. Willow Cool 887 says, you didn't give you or your husband's age, but I'm assuming from this that he's around 4 years old. In that case, it's okay for you to try to expand his palate, but kids are notoriously stubborn and picky eaters, and while that can be frustrating, you can't just let him go without food. As a small child, he depends on you to feed him, and it is borderline abusive not to prepare meals for him that he will eat. Oh, wait, what's that? This is a grown-ass man who is married and helped you produce another human being? Never mind then. As an adult human being, he is fully capable of at least trying one of the nice meals that you graciously cook for him, just like you tried for years to accommodate his tastes. In cooking his meals for him, mind you, to your own detriment. And whether he wants to try your cooking or not, he is also fully capable of obtaining meals for himself that he likes, either by cooking or by going through the drive-thru. But this garbage, where he basically says, I refuse to try the things you cook because I don't like them, so please stop cooking those things I don't like, even though I don't know if I like them, in a way that I will like, though, is BS. Not the a-hole. And Recipesa79 says, what a ridiculous question. Do you really need to ask if making healthy meals for you and your young daughter is an a-hole move? Obviously not the a-hole. Your husband is acting like a petulant child. He can either eat healthy meals that you make, or he can eat his artery-clogging unhealthy foods and watch you and your daughter eat nutritious meals and shut his mouth. As a dad, he should want his daughter to eat healthy meals. What is wrong with this guy? Posted by user Niece Not For Me. Titled, Am I the a-hole for calling out my niece's excuse for wearing a thong around the house when she was staying over with us? My niece, 19, is staying with us for a few weeks while her parents figure out some family stuff. Typically, a 19-year-old would stay alone, but for good reason, her parents, my husband's sister and brother-in-law, don't trust her. I have 2 22 and 17-year-old daughters, so I'm acutely aware of the kind of trouble girls get into at this age. After the first couple of days of being polite, I suppose, she started to push boundaries. She wore really low-riding jean shorts with an obvious thong sticking out, and I initially held my tongue. I would never let my daughters dress like that around the house. When she continued to do it, I said, and I quote, well, it's not my place to tell you what to wear outside. When you're with us, please make sure you're wearing something that covers up a little more, pointing to her back. I thought she'd listen, but she only redoubled her efforts, and even said that she wears them because they're comfortable, and told me to take a chill pill. I called her out and said we were all 20 years old once, and with 2 daughters, I can tell that no one thinks they're the most comfortable thing. You're wearing them to feel sexy, and that's great, but let's be respectful. Unfortunately, she took this the wrong way and blew up her parents' phone, telling me I was controlling and she wanted her parents to pay for a hotel room. They obviously refused. Now she's in her room the whole time and refuses to talk to me. Am I the a-hole here? And I'll note I didn't even call her out on her wearing obviously low-cut revealing tops and a lack of bra basically all the time because I figured I'd pick my battles. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I might be the a-hole because I called her out and made her embarrassed, but I think it came from a good place. That's absolute bullcrap. It did not come from a good place. And stop disillusioning yourself with the stupid notion that you think it came from a good place, because it's not. That was so toxic. You really sound like a snob, OP, and that doesn't come from a good place in my heart. That comes from a bad place. You sound like a terrible person. She's obviously got something going on in her life that she can't be with her parents right now, and instead of comforting her and letting her live her life at 19, wearing whatever she wants inside your house, you go and slut-shame her and drag her down. Oh, because in 2021 it's obviously shameful to wear no bra, revealing tops and a G-string, oh my god. It's just sacrilege when she does this around the house and no one else gets to see it but you. She's obviously looking for attention from all the boys that are constantly coming through the house, and oh my god, OP, what will we do? The devil is in that woman's mind. Get him out! Get him out right now, you need to save her! All of your thought processes here and everything you're judging her for is all poppycock. She's not just doing it to feel sexy, you can just do it to feel comfortable, or whatever you want to do in your own place because it's private, and why are you judging her? You really suck as a person, OP, and I hope you take that to heart. You're the a-hole. In the comments, Dramatic Scarcity says, "You're the a-hole. How is it 2021 and we still carry the dumb stereotype that thongs are trouble and only for when women want to feel sexy? Many, many women wear thongs because they're far more comfortable under tightish pants. They're practical and smart. And by the way, your niece is a woman. She's 19 years old. Get the hell out of her business." And edit, thanks so much for the rewards. I also want to add a response to a lot of the pushback on here. 1. Yes, the niece is an adult, and she can choose what she wears without being policed by anyone, including the person she's staying with, as long as she's covered. And she clearly is covered. She's wearing pants for goodness sakes. 2. It's fine to be uncomfortable with the top of someone's thong, but here's how you address it. Hey, your underwear's hanging out. Here's how you don't address it. Hey, I know you're 19 and want to feel sexy. We all did at that age, but wear some different underwear. Some of you guys really care about my house, my rules, and sure, OP should be free to live in a house where she doesn't have to see the top of someone's underwear if that's what she wants. My house, my rules is not an excuse to pass judgment on your guests though, or control what a guest wears. Again, as long as she's covered. And 3, people are saying that I and other commenters are missing the point. We aren't. We're just paying attention to a point that you don't care about. And that's okay. This is Am I the A-hole? Here's the point as we see it. OP made the entire issue about a judgment on women who wear thongs and projected that onto her guest as a way to address a much smaller issue. St. Alvis says, "You're the a-hole. Please stop sexualizing your niece. Also your daughters, but one thing at a time. Or one thong at a time." And MM172 says, "Everyone sucks here. Yeah, okay, it wouldn't kill her to stick to pants that cover her underwear, but frankly, you don't have the authority to let your 22-year-old decide what she wants to wear either. And while I don't understand how some women think thongs and low-rise jeans are more comfortable, I know they're out there. So maybe refrain from speculating on her motivations just because it's not your style?" Posted by user I am a dad of 2 girls, titled, Am I the a-hole for trying to get my girls interested in my hobbies and interests instead of getting into theirs? So I have two girls, 13 and 10, with my wife of 9 years. My girls are typical girls and don't have a lot of interests in common with me. I tried from a young age to get them interested in things that we could share. They just never got interested. I'm talking things like video games, science fiction, and fantasy books, Star Wars, Iron Man, Batman, etc. These are all popular things that I see a lot of other parents getting into with their kids. They are more interested in things I just can't relate to. The 13-year-old is into fashion, clothes, makeup, hair, all of that. The younger one really likes animals and JoJo Bo. I've tried to be interested in their things. We watched this really bad, campy TV show called One Day at a Time, but I didn't like it and found the writing bad, and they got mad at me when I would laugh. The older ones liked the show Riverdale, which I admit was a little more interesting, but it was all a bunch of gossipy teen stuff. I just hit a wall. I couldn't figure out why I was going through all of this effort to spend time with them when they obviously don't care enough to be interested in things I care about either. I tried to sit down with them and watch The Mandalorian, and they didn't like it. That really hurt me. Like, really, really hurt me. I know kids aren't going to be your own reflection staring back at you, but I thought I'd at least be able to share the things I love with them. I thought we'd get to spend time together, instead of being one of those fractured families with no interest in each other. I told my wife that I was sick of feeling like an outsider in my own family, and that I'd like it if we could maybe do some designated time that we would do things I liked too. I suggested we could all sit down and learn to play this board game I like, Settlers of Catan. My wife told me that I need to stop trying to force my stuff down their throats and find a balance somehow. I told her that this is the balance. I can't pretend to be interested in things like gossipy TV dramas, soap operas, etc., when that just isn't me. I'm not a teenage girl, I can't pretend to be one. Am I the a-hole? I feel lonely in my own family. While it's unfortunate they don't like the stuff that you're into, it's kind of not their job as your kids to be into those things if they don't want to, neither is anyone else. Yes, it's unfortunate they don't like it, and yes, it's unfortunate you don't like their stuff, but that doesn't mean you force your stuff until they do like it. That doesn't sound like a good compromise, and that doesn't sound like a good idea. They are not forcing you to participate in their activities. They like spending time with you. You're their dad, they're your kids. You should find common ground and put up with things that they like that you don't particularly like, because you need to form a connection with them. And also, they're not getting angry at you, and they're not forcing you to do things that they like that you don't. That definition alone doesn't make them the a-hole, but it certainly makes you one. So that's what I'm going with. You're the a-hole. In the comments, RevMatt says, "You're the a-hole. Part of being a parent is taking an interest in what your kids are into, whether you like it or not. And trying to force kids to get into whatever you're interested in pretty much never works." Yep. What's the bet? Mom has done most of the parenting, and he thought she just really enjoyed Peppa Pig and In the Night Garden. You're the a-hole, OP. Learn to enjoy spending time with your own kids. What? You mean mums don't read The Very Hungry Caterpillar a million times because it's their favorite piece of English literature? Do you know how many books I've memorized from sheer repetition? At least the better ones have a good rhythm. Shout out to Dr. Seuss. You're the a-hole. They are literal kids. It's not their job to placate you to build a relationship. These are the years that you connect and show interest in them, not complain that their perfectly normal and appropriate young girl interests aren't exciting enough for you. Why should they be interested in you when you're not interested in them? This is so typical of men. Things young girls are into are considered boring and lame, but this guy's an adult and still reading Batman comics, and that's fine? Nothing wrong with reading comics, that is to say, but the fact that comics which are written for kids and teens are totally valid, while his young girl's interests aren't, tells me a lot about how he sees women and their interests. Yep, it's pretty telling that his attempts at bridging the gap are so stereotypical male things. He didn't even try to find a middle ground. Biking, hiking, swimming, baseball, soccer, rock climbing, art, cooking, camping, skiing, basketball, Harry Potter, ooh, Hermione. Nope, didn't extend himself at all. Just, well, they need to like what I like, or I will laugh at them right in their faces. You feel like an outsider because your kids don't want to read Batman comics? Oh boy. You're the a-hole. You're the parent, suck it up and spend time with your kids. There's nothing wrong with having a game night, but you can't force your kids into your hobbies. You sound like a whiny brat right now. Listen to your wife. Posted by user SuperPizza2985. Titled, Am I the a-hole for not wanting to leave my own apartment? I'll keep this vague to avoid recognition, since I believe the parts involved actually use Reddit. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I've been friends with my roommate, a 25-year-old female, ever since we were babies. Our families were neighbors, and we grew up together. She's like a little sister to me, and always has been. After she graduated college, she moved to the same city I currently work in, and since she couldn't find an apartment close enough to where she worked, I told her she could live with me. We'd share bills and become roommates. We never really had problems or fights as we've known each other for so long. However, recently, things have taken a strange turn. She got involved with someone from her work. The guy seemed to be a nice guy. I've only ever spoken to him 3 times as they usually keep to her room. But he was very friendly, and honestly, I was happy she found someone who seemed that nice. After a few months of their relationship, she sent me a text saying she needed to talk with me. I figured there might be something wrong with the apartment. It's not uncommon for things to break. But I was wrong. When I got home, we started talking. It's too long to write everything, so I'll just summarize. She told me that while she enjoyed living with me, her boyfriend was starting to get jealous of his woman living with another man. At first I raised an eyebrow, but I thought that this kind of thing isn't uncommon. So I was like, oh, it's fine. Just let me know when you plan on leaving. Hope you two find a good place. However, apparently I was wrong. She told me that she wasn't leaving. She said that it was impossible to find someone closer to her work, and that she was hoping I would let her take the apartment instead, since my work wasn't close and all that. Thing is, I really love my place. It's close to the gym, to the grocery store, to pretty much everything. I'm not just gonna leave my place because of something so stupid as this, and I told her flat out that it wasn't going to happen. She got visibly upset and started to rant about me being an egotistical asshole, that I didn't have empathy to put myself in her shoes. This happened a few days ago, and she's shut herself in her room, only ever leaving to go to work or pick up her boyfriend, who became really unfriendly to me after that. Now, usually I can be an a-hole, but I don't think this is one of these times. So I thought I would ask for Reddit's verdict. Am I really such an a-hole? Edit, I didn't expect this to get this much attention. For those who have asked, her name isn't on the lease as I lived in the same place for 2 years before she moved in. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. My childhood friend wants me to leave my apartment for her since her boyfriend is jealous of us living together. While this might sound silly, I am usually an a-hole, but I don't think I am in this case. However, we've been at this for days, and it's making me feel really bad about it, which might make me an a-hole at the end of the day. And I might be an a-hole for saying this one as well, but this sounds like a them problem. Damn, that really sucks for you, Chief. God, it sucks to be this couple that has created a them problem. Sounds like their problem to me. In what universe is this okay for her to ask you to move out when you've been there for 2 years? This is your lifestyle. Nothing is changing. She shouldn't expect you to change. Sure, she may be your childhood friend, but that gives her no more excuse or reason to force you out of this place. Childish act on her behalf. She is acting like an absolute child, and so is this boyfriend for being jealous. Disgustingly childish behavior by these two. She's 25 years old, she should know better than this by now. If she wants to placate her little jealous boyfriend who throws a temper tantrum when he doesn't get his way, they can go live somewhere happily ever after together that isn't this apartment. It's obvious to me that they can't take no for an answer, that they can't get over the fact that a man and a woman can live together without anything happening, especially being childhood friends. And if they're going to throw a hissy fit over this and, take this out on OP, not talk to OP, that's absolutely their prerogative, but I judge them for being absolute babies. So no, OP, stand your ground, don't listen to them, deal with this like an adult does, because you're definitely not going to get adult behavior from these two. Not the a-hole. Now in the comments, MeatCube says, "Let me get this straight. You have known her for over 2 decades. You welcome her into your own home, and now she expects you to leave so she can live with her jealous boyfriend that she's just gotten on with? Not the a-hole, bro. She is big time. Look at how she treats someone who is like a sibling." I'm super curious as to why she's not going over to her boyfriend's place. Why doesn't the friend and her boyfriend find a place of their own rather than try to kick someone out who was nice enough to let her move another place? Theory: she told boyfriend it was her place and she was being a great friend letting OP crash there. Now she's been caught out in the lie. This is kind of what I was starting to feel she told her boyfriend. She should have realized that she would have had to tell the boyfriend the truth eventually if she told him that lie. Oh my god, not the a-hole. She can pack her entitlement up with her crap and move out. It's your apartment. You did her the favor. The effing audacity, I swear. Don't be surprised when she reappears on your doorstep, wanting to move back in when living with the boyfriend doesn't work out. She sounds less than mature. Just say no, not the a-hole. It probably won't work out because her boyfriend is an insecure, controlling a-hole. St. Alvis says, "Not the a-hole. That's some A5 Wagyu level entitlement right there." She said that it was impossible to find someone closer to her work, and that she was hoping I would let her take the apartment instead, since my work wasn't close and all of that. Wait, so she's not even moving in with the boyfriend? She just wants you gone. I think he meant somewhere, and autocorrect played a trick on him. And Academic Nobody 4964 says, "Not the a-hole. It was your place first, and she's the one having an issue with the living situation. If her new boyfriend has such a problem with her living with you, then he should offer her to move in with him. What she ends up doing is totally her choice, but you shouldn't be forced to move, and I think she's being incredibly unreasonable. Actually, it wasn't his place first. It was his place always and her place never. This, she isn't even on the lease, not the a-hole." Posted by user Mama2456, titled, "Am I the a-hole for letting my daughter use my son's car when he was away at college and not telling him when she damaged it? This has caused a lot of stir in our household, and I'm finally deciding to post on this sub. Long-time reader. My son is 20 and a sophomore in college. He currently lives there in an apartment, but does not have his car there. He has left his car at home, but is adamant that nobody use it. In October, my daughter turned 16. She went and got her driver's license a few weeks after. She passed the test with no problems, though I'll admit she struggled at times when she drove with me. Her best friend lives in the same subdivision as us, a 4-minute drive half a mile away. There's no traffic or stoplights involved when driving to her friend's house. Well, she really wanted to drive herself there the day she got her license. I had some errands to run, so I let her take my son's car. And well, I watched her pull out of our driveway and completely clipped the side of the car against our brick mailbox. The right front headlight was smashed, and the bumper had a pretty big dent and scrapes. My son has a pretty bad temper, and I was terrified about how he'd react. Daughter is very quiet and sensitive, and I know my son would probably dish out enough insults to her to put her in therapy. Not knowing what to do, I called my mum to see if she'd pay to get it fixed. She was the one who bought him the car. After she told me she would, I kind of forgot about it. Son came home from school a week before I expected him to, and the car wasn't sent to be repaired yet. I don't want to get into the reaction too much, but he was not very happy. He was furious at both me and his sister. He tore into her really bad, making her cry. I recently was finally able to put a stop to him calling her an invalid. This has been a problem for years, since daughter showed signs of social awkwardness, but I finally got him to stop as of last year. But after this, he kept sarcastically gloating that he was right and his sister is an R-word. He said he was taking all of his valuables out of our home because he obviously can't trust me with anything of his. My mum paid for the car to be fixed, but son is insisting his sister or I pay my mum back for the damages since it was our fault and we're getting off without consequences. I know I was wrong to lend him the car, but I tried to hide it from him only to protect my daughter. Was I wrong? And edit, daughter is not in therapy for the way her brother treats her. I had a poor choice of words. I did not mean that literally. I just meant that he can be a bit of a name-caller if he's really angry about something. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they may be the a-hole. I let my daughter use my son's car without permission, and she damaged it. I hid it from my son to protect daughter from his outburst. I think a lot of the failure is on your part here, OP, for not stopping a lot of these things from the get-go. Obviously, these are two people who can make their own decisions and do their own things, but that name-calling should have been destroyed at the source. He's 20 years old and a sophomore in college, using that language on your daughter. That is absolutely disgusting on his part. I can understand why he'd be mad that his car was destroyed in a way like that, but there is no way that you can come back from calling someone the R-word. That's just not acceptable in our society and isn't compatible with what everyone else says. Now, I'm not blaming OP for him saying these words. I'm saying it looks like a lot of things could have been prevented by OP, and, teaching the daughter to drive properly, or the daughter paying attention while she's driving and not destroying a car, would have done wonders here. I think major fault here is on OP for allowing the daughter to drive the car when, the son expressly said, "Do not drive my car, no one's allowed to drive my car." And then, of course, you keep coming back to the point that you didn't tell him about it, and you tried to get it fixed, and you didn't get it fixed, and then he's pissed off because you hid that from him. That really sucks. I'm gonna go with everyone sucks here. This is a mess. Now in the comments, Eden Gone Dark says, "Everyone sucks here, but you suck the most." There's a lot to unpack here. 1. You gave your daughter permission to use her brother's car without his permission when he explicitly told you not to. This makes you an a-hole. 2. You didn't tell your son it was damaged immediately after the fact. This makes you an a-hole. 3. You asked your mother to fix it for you instead of owning up to your own F-up and fixing it yourself. This makes you triple the a-hole and irresponsible. 4. You say you finally got your son to stop calling your daughter an invalid after years of it? Excuse me, why the F would you let that go on for years? And 5. Your son is an a-hole for calling his sister the R-word. I'm even having a hard time considering your daughter an a-hole at all, seeing as you gave her permission. And then you sit there and let your son verbally abuse her as a result of your mistake? Step up. Parent your kids. Quote, "My son has a bad temper," end quote. I wonder if he just has a bad temper, or if there's more to it than that. My dad required keys to our vehicles when we lived at home, yet you never had to say, "Don't let anyone drive it." So if OP is willing to ignore that to the extent of putting a new driver behind the wheel, then I'm curious if there's a bunch of other times OP has done stuff like that to their son. I suspect the son's temper is a result of a sister who has repeatedly intruded on his personal space and damaged his possessions while being too quiet and sensitive to ever be punished. Or does he have a temper because mum is a boundary stomper and sister is a convenient target because she's quiet and sensitive? We only know about the car borrowing. However, if she saw no problem with allowing sister to borrow brother's car, I wonder what else she might have done that could constitute a massive boundary stomp. You're the a-hole. If it's in his name, he could sue you or his sister for theft and damage. Pay back, apologize, admit you effed up. You're the a-hole. I'm not entirely sure why you wouldn't be. I get protecting your daughter from what he says, but if you're that worried about his temper, why let your 16-year-old daughter, who's a new driver that sometimes struggles, drive his car? No forethought in this. You're the a-hole. 1, this was not yours to loan. 2, your daughter had trouble driving with you, and not even a day later, but just hours after you loan her a car that wasn't yours to loan. 3, she couldn't even drive out of the driveway, and you couldn't pay for the repairs. 4, you hid the damage from him, and 5, you obviously should pay your mother back. You were more worried about protecting your daughter than there being consequences for her damaging the car. You were in the wrong on all accounts. Posted by user AmITheA Crybaby. Titled, Am I the a-hole for taking attention away from the bride at a wedding? I suffer from panic disorder, which means I tend to suffer panic attacks on a regular basis. They're usually triggered by external stimuli, especially if it's related to my C-PTSD, but they can also happen seemingly out of nowhere. I was abused repeatedly as a child, and am still dealing with the fallout in adulthood. Fast forward to last weekend. My girlfriend's cousin, let's call her Susan, was getting married, and invited me to come to the wedding as a +1. It was a very small, intimate ceremony, but relatively safe given the pandemic restrictions. I'd already been feeling on edge earlier that morning after an argument with my dad, but decided to come anyway, thinking being with my girlfriend's family would help get my mind off of things. Sadly, this on-edge feeling didn't go away. I tried to hold in my anxiety to keep the peace, but it wasn't working. My girlfriend tried calming me down, holding my hand, and assuring me everything was okay. After a few minutes, I got up during the vows and headed for the lobby and tried to calm down. My girlfriend got up with me. A few people stared at us as we left. After a while, I did feel better, and some relatives asked me if I was alright. It felt nice knowing these total strangers weren't going to judge me for a mental health crisis that I couldn't control. Later that day, I was at my girlfriend's apartment. While she was in the bathroom, her phone went off, revealing a string of texts from Susan. I didn't snoop through her phone. Texts on iPhones appear briefly for a few seconds while on sleep mode. Due to post-length rules, I'll give a brief summary. Susan thanked my girlfriend for coming to her wedding, but added that it was very rude to just get up and leave in the middle of the ceremony. Susan said she worked her butt off to make the wedding happen in spite of the pandemic, my girlfriend and I took attention away from her, and that I should have stayed home. I later told my girlfriend about the texts, and she apologized profusely for Susan's behavior. She said she never remembered her cousin acting like this, and maybe she was just caught up in the heat of the wedding. I'm sure that's true, but Susan's not the first person bothered by my panic attacks, and she won't be the last. Maybe I should have stayed home. I was already feeling panicky to begin with, but I left anyway because I love being around my girlfriend and her family. Maybe it was selfish of me to do this on such a special occasion as a wedding. Am I the a-hole? Edit, I don't think I made a big scene or anything. I had some staggered breathing, tremors, and felt lightheaded. There were about 12 to 15 people in the audience. I can understand, having to in that moment because the anxiety was getting a bit too much for you and that it was something you couldn't control, but I can fault you for not controlling your actions beforehand and, understanding where your anxiety takes you and realizing you could have removed yourself from that situation before it got to the vows. Because even if you didn't want to, you still made a scene and you upset Susan on her wedding day. The world is already a stressful enough place, and I think you did make it a little bit more stressful than it needed to be at this time. I don't think you're a horrible person for doing so. I think you made a mistake, and I think that mistake could have not been made beforehand, but you stuck it out anyway, and as a result, this happened. I can't particularly fault you for wanting to do that and wanting to save face, but as a result of it, you've taken away from the ceremony, that's for sure, and it has had an impact. And as unfortunate as that is, you're the a-hole for that. Susan, unfortunately, has every right to be upset in this instance. Wanna Die 420 says, "Gentle, you're the a-hole. Look, I empathize as I have an anxiety disorder and depression, but just because we can't help that we have them, doesn't mean we suddenly don't have to hold ourselves accountable for our actions and the way they affect folks regardless. It explains our behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. You were already feeling panicky, and given that you knew a breakdown was coming, it's a little bit selfish to have gone to someone's wedding expecting their family to make you feel better. Honestly, Susan's reaction was valid. It's understandable to be hurt in her position, like going to one of her most emotional milestones, not to be there to support her, but to use it as a distraction is a little, self-centered. At the end of the day, you do owe her an apology." I agree with this also, especially the point about OP wanting the girlfriend's family to make them feel better. Knowing that the girlfriend and family were already obligated to the wedding, it was kinda selfish to go solely for their support. My husband suffers from social anxieties, and he usually avoids them like the plague. However, if he decides to go anyway, then he holds himself together and excuses himself at the appropriate time, which isn't in the middle of the ceremony. And OP says, "You're right. I was so focused on trying to help myself that I didn't take into account how others might react to my panic attack during a wedding versus anywhere else. I left a voicemail and text to Susan apologizing for what I did. I had no malicious intent, and I hope she doesn't see it that way either." I think over-communication could have helped in the hours leading to the panic attack. Letting your partner, or whoever your designated person is, know when you're feeling close to a panic attack will always yield opportunities for you to receive proper care and not cause alarm for others. This is something you could have communicated well in advance too. That way, the bride and groom would have a heads up and make accommodations for you. Deleted account says, "A very, very gentle, you're the a-hole. As someone who suffers from autism and anxiety, it's my responsibility to make sure that my issues don't affect others negatively. If I know I'm having a bad day, it's up to me to make sure I either stay home or put plans in place to make sure things still run smoothly. The world doesn't revolve around my condition, and I shouldn't expect it to." I completely agree. If you were having a great day, and then something like a strobe light or a loud noise triggered you, you are very welcome to leave quietly. But if you're already feeling bad, you have to react to that. OP could have easily accounted for it in this case. I completely agree with you. Part of being on the spectrum is learning to cope with your environment and avoiding triggers when possible. That's a huge part of the education process. Part of the responsibility should have been on the girlfriend, however. My husband has ASD, and while he is responsible for himself, if I notice that he's having a bad day, I will try to do what I can to make it better. Giving him extra time to himself, giving him a massage when the anxiety and stress causes tension, etc. He does the same for me when I have a bad day, though I'm neurotypical. It's not the girlfriend's job to baby him, but when your significant other is having a bad day, cased anxiety, ASD, PTSD or whatever, then altering the plans may be necessary. She could have suggested going without him or staying at home with him. And Liar's Little Pretty says, well, you know the feelings that are about to bring on a panic attack, it seems, so you should start listening to them and plan accordingly. It was a bit rude to leave during that moment and then come back like everything was fine without apologizing for the disruption. So slight you're the a-hole. And OP does an edit too in their post saying, I now see that I am the a-hole here, but thanks for also being understanding of my disorder. I hope Susan will accept my apology. I never meant to ruin the wedding, but I shouldn't have used it as a way to make myself feel better. I should have stayed home and found someone else to talk through my panic attack. I just thought my girlfriend would have been the best person at the moment. And now onto the update. Thank you for the feedback. The final consensus was I'm the a-hole, but I think the many not the a-holes I received had some good points too. I shouldn't have gone to the wedding when I was about to have a panic attack, but as long as I was there, leaving before I could really make a scene was the best I could do at the moment, albeit poorly timed. I left Susan both a text and a voicemail apologizing for taking attention away from her. I had no malicious intent, and was simply trying to solve a mental health crisis in what I thought was the best option, being with my girlfriend rather than by myself. Nevertheless, I shouldn't have used a wedding to make myself feel better. Later that night, Susan texted me saying she accepted my apology, and that she would be off her phone for a while for her honeymoon. I was happy that Susan forgave me, but for a while, my mind went into a dark place about the whole ordeal with panic attacks. I'd spent a lifetime being treated like there was something wrong with me, whether from my abusive father or others who didn't know or care enough to act with my best interests at heart. My own mum tried to get rid of me as a baby before giving my dad full custody. I wished I could just disappear. One psych eval and several counselling sessions later, I'm on a more stable path mentally than a few weeks ago. I was given stronger meds that I could take right before I have another panic attack. I also want to get some sort of support animal to have in my apartment. I'm not going to let my disorder keep me from living my life, but I'll probably stay away from larger social functions until I'm comfortable enough to do so again. I look forward to a nice Thanksgiving with my girlfriend's family this week. Thank you again for helping me put my situation into perspective. I may have been the a-hole at the wedding, but I'll try to be more mindful of future social gatherings from now on. And in the comments, happy to hear you're taking steps toward taking care of yourself to potentially prevent attacks like this in the future. Also, congrats on the future support pet. I find my dog is a huge help with my personal struggles with anxiety. Oh, believe you me, I'd love to get a dog, but I'm a college student in a studio apartment, not the ideal circumstances for that kind of pet. If you do consider yourself a smaller pet like a rabbit, definitely take a look at r/rabbits for care advice and tips. Rabbits are so lovely, but I find they require a bit more maintenance than a cat or dog, considering their diets and destruction levels. If you're renting, I don't know if a rabbit is a great idea, because they can chew up carpet, door frames, and would need a good span to run around in your house. Definitely explore your options though. I'm glad you're in a better place. Perhaps a suggestion? It seems like you were on edge from a fight with your dad, and in this post, you confirmed it was him that was abusive. It might be best to discontinue contact either temporarily or permanently, especially if he can still put you that much on edge as an adult. Just a thought to aid in your mental health journey. Nolan358 says, good for you for reaching out to the bride and smoothing things over. That must have been very hard for you. I'm sure the bride knew deep down that it wasn't malicious. I have also been somebody to struggle with mental health issues, and even now, after dealing with it for many years, I avoid large crowds or bigger social gatherings. It's just not worth the impact it has on my head. My dog is my safe space. She's not a service dog, but she makes a night and day difference to my life. Just food for thought, and good luck. Posted by user Stir Shine. Titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she doesn't deserve my sympathy anymore? Hello again, Reddit. I know the title makes me sound like a complete jerk, but hear me out. In 2019, my sister, referred to as A, was kicked out of our parents' home after walking out on an argument. They threw all of her things on the driveway and kept what they wanted to keep. Right after this argument with A happened, I received several nasty phone calls and texts about how I manipulated A into leaving them and that I was dead to them. Spoiler alert, I was bought. Or not, I guess, I don't know. A moved in with a cousin who lived closer to her job, and lived there for about 8 months. After several fights with our cousin, A decided to leave, saying that trying to convince our cousin was like fighting a brick wall. I figured A would move into a dorm room, considering she was at the time a college student. A story for another day. But to my surprise, A moved back in with our parents, something I turned down when offered. Since then, A has been non-stop complaining about things our parents do, to the point where it drives me crazy and affects my mental health. I get that people need to vent, but it's constant. A few days ago, I finally had enough and told A in a family group chat that she did this to herself and knew what she was walking into, so I no longer feel bad for her and the spot she's in. My stepmom, the one I actually can stand, almost immediately told me that that was the wrong thing to say, but I told her that I'm standing by my words. So, am I the a-hole? Edit. Sorry about the missing info. Here's some more context. I was on a break at work and only had 15 minutes to type this out. A and I's parents got divorced when we were very young, so my parents are considered to be my mum and her wife, as they were the ones who raised us. My father and his wife, my stepmom, are the only other two in the group chat, and they both feel the same way I do. As to why I did it publicly, A is known to manipulate others into doing what she wants and does lie. I don't know, I feel like it is kind of tacky to do that in the group chat. This is something that I feel like you could have dealt with in private with A, but instead you decided to say it in front of everyone and make a bigger issue of it. Yes, it may be affecting your mental health, and yeah, maybe it was the right thing to say, but it was definitely not the time and place for it. I feel like you could have discussed this with her in private instead of saying that in front of the entire family. I'm getting a right message, wrong place vibe. And wrong place still makes you an a-hole, even if the message didn't make you an a-hole, per se. Now in the comments, Fleagle2212 says, "You would be not the a-hole, except for in a family group chat. You're the a-hole." This is very confusing. Who made those nasty phone calls? Who was she arguing with before being kicked out? Why is there a stepmom around if your parents live together with your sister? Sorry, I was quickly writing this on my break at work. My parents, my mum and her wife, made the calls to me. Same parents, as I mentioned, was who A was arguing with. My father and his wife are those who I get along with. Okay, that makes sense. I think you're the a-hole. Your sister did nothing bad to you, and she might not have had any other option than moving back. You could have told her that you don't want to receive her rants, but the way you said it is very confrontational for no reason, and a family chat is definitely not the place. You may be the a-hole for saying it, but it doesn't mean you're wrong. You're the a-hole for saying it in front of other members of the family. You could have caught this earlier and set up boundaries and enforced them, but you let it fester until you snapped. That's on you. It's okay to feel frustrated and drained by that, but grow up about it and talk about your feelings instead of just lashing out when you've had enough. Info. How old is A? What were they arguing about, and did they keep anything that belonged to her? I'm trying to determine if parents and brother are abusing a child or otherwise being a-holes. A at the time was 21. They were arguing about how A was not keeping things up to standard with cleaning. They've been fighting about that since A was 14. Honestly, not the worst they've done to either of us. Got it. And did they keep anything that she bought? They did. She got it back when she moved back in. And now on to the update. So I pulled A aside and spoke to her before I went into work this morning. I apologized both for what I said and where I said it. Neither were appropriate, but at the time felt justified. When she asked me why I said what I did, I was honest with her. I explained that I wasn't ready to fully face the reality of what our parents did to us, and that my current wrist situation was already more than I could handle. I also explained that her venting, though it's needed, brings back so much of that past that I'm not ready to face. A sounded like she understood, but was all for rubbing it in my face about how much of a jerk I was, in typical A fashion. All in all, the conversation went well, and A accepted my apology like she usually does. I can only hope that she takes my words seriously, and we can both move on. It sounds like you're very self-aware now of some of the problems you both face. I would recommend therapy for you 1000%, you and your sister. You need to process in a healthy way what happened to you, not keeping it bottled up like a bomb, and anyone complaining about your parents sets it off. I'm a habitual complainer. Usually, I good-naturedly gripe about things in my life, and my friends and family are aware that I'm grumpy and can tell me to chill any time. The problem here is that your sister also seems not to be able to drop the subject, as in, her problems are not getting solved by just her venting. You could try having a conversation with her about how when she's ready to do something to help change her circumstances, you'll be there for her. This is going to continue to be tough until there's healthy coping mechanisms all around. No a-holes here. I'm very proud of you for accepting your judgment and making a really awesome effort to grow yourself and apologize. Yeah, hopefully once the pandemic is over I can start. I know it's been needed for a long time, but I just can't afford it. Patatiet Patata says, sounds like you've been trying to establish boundaries, and your sister is stomping all over them. If it's unhealthy for you to keep being dragged into drama concerning your mum and stepmom, I think you're fully in your right to ask your sister to stop. Parents who told you were dead to them for seemingly no good reason don't get to keep judging you. The way you went at it is not best, but you already know that, and you've shown that you want to do better. You've apologized to your sister. You sound young, and it seems you grew up with unhealthy family dynamics. Do yourself a favor, and as soon as possible, find someone to talk to. You need to learn what a normal upbringing should have brought you so that you can deal and navigate those situations the best. Suggest to your sister to also seek counseling. Through her school, she's likely to have some free or reduced options, since it appears she went back to an unhealthy and abusive household on her own, which is what victims often end up doing, locking them further into a vicious circle. And OP replies, this post pretty much sums up my life. My mum and stepmom weren't always this bad, but it got a lot worse after we moved to Florida. I've done my best to separate myself from them, but it's not easy when it's all I grew up with. I've done my best to break the cycle. My boyfriend has done his best to show me something a bit more normal with his family, but I find it strange. My sister hasn't been as lucky. She falls into the same habits as our mother, which sucks, because we both used to be each other's rock of stability. Now she relies on me to keep things stable, and I can't turn to her anymore without it being tossed in my face. It sucks, but I'm borderline cutting them all off. I can't take the stress of them and my medical issues at the same time. Posted by user ThrowRA39213112. Titled, My, male 25, parents threaten to disown me if I don't get cosmetic facial surgery ? I was born with bilateral cleft lip and palate, and my parents brought me to the US at a young age so that I could get better medical treatment. I've had countless surgeries over the years to fix the birth defect, and during my last year of high school, I had 5 surgeries back to back, with a few weeks rest in between, to finish up the last of my procedures. It was an extremely painful time for me, and I suffered depression for years afterwards due to the whole ordeal. As an added cherry on top, I missed half my senior year, didn't get into most of the universities I applied to, and my friends told me, in a well-meaning way, that I looked the same when I reunited with them. I did manage to get into a decent university and worked my way through my depression, without parental support or therapy for the most part, and I've now mostly come to terms with everything. I have one more surgery left that would get rid of some post-surgery scars. There are 3 scars, one that goes from the top of my lower lip to just past my mentolabial crease, and 2 scars that are where my philtral ridges would be. They're definitely noticeable when I don't have facial hair. When I grow my beard out, the scars on my upper lips aren't visible, but the one on my lower lip is to a decent extent. The procedure is an hour-long in-office op, so not a huge deal, but it's 100% cosmetic and not needed health-wise. I hate hospitals and don't ever want to enter another one unless required for my health. To this day, I get uncomfortable even when I'm watching people get their blood drawn on TV. There's this quote I saw on the TV show House MD, Season 4, Episode 7. The main character, House, was talking to a patient who wanted cosmetic surgery for a serious facial deformity that he had. House replied by saying, "It'll only change your face, it won't change who your face made you." It sounds silly, but that quote has stuck with me for years, and is one of the main reasons I've refused to get the cosmetic procedure done. I also see my scars as a litmus test. If you don't want to associate yourself with me because of them, great. We don't have to waste each other's time. But if you see them and still want to be around or near me, you're the type of person I want in my life. I'm 100% at peace with the way I look, and because of everything I've gone through, the bullying, surgeries, struggles, etc., I'd say I'm even more open and confident with my face than someone who hasn't experienced what I have. My parents have always provided a roof for me, paid for my surgeries, given me 3 square meals, etc. But they've also been very verbally abusive and manipulative. We butt heads on everything from my career choice to my hobbies. I currently live with them, but I'm working to move out. They've been wanting me to get the last surgery done for years now, but I've refused for the aforementioned reasons. Whenever I try to explain my point of view, they refuse to listen and say I'm naive. They also said that no one will marry me and or give me good job opportunities due to the scars. But the only one who ever even brings them up or makes me feel uncomfortable about them is my parents. Now, I've recently been cutting my hair very short because I've been going bald. I like the new look a lot, and it leaves me with more confidence than long hair. But my parents despise this length and forbade me from cutting it that short. They think no one will hire me for jobs because I look bad with it. Literally everyone else except them thinks I look good with short hair. But I've been setting boundaries with them and have been getting it cut regardless of what they say. It leads, however, to a fight every single time. I got it cut today after a month of letting it grow out, and before I went to the barber's, my mother tried to stop me. She claimed I was being disobedient, making her health worse, and that my behavior would be the death of her. Stuff she's said to me since I was a little kid over the most meaningless things. I ignored her and got the cut. When I came back, I got into an argument with both my parents. They pointed out that I haven't been listening to them as of late, and I firmly told them they had no control over what I do with my body. Out of nowhere, my father said, "If you want to cut your hair like this, then fine. I can't control you. But you will get your last surgery done, and if you don't, we're never going to speak to you again." My mother agreed that they'd never speak to me again if I didn't relent, and my father pointed out that they spent years seeing my surgeries through. He said that it wasn't fair for me to refuse to get the final procedure done after everything they'd gone through to make it all happen. He claimed I was denying them the chance to see the end result of my surgeries. Truth be told, it felt really good to hear him say that he'd never speak to me again. It happened hours ago, and I'm still riding that high a little bit. I've been planning on going minimal contact with them for years now when I finally move out, and this seems like the perfect out. As for our relationship, I try to have as little contact with them as possible, even though we live in the same house. I stay in my room or go out a lot. But they're not the only ones who want to see me get the surgery done. I have a grandfather who also expressed that he wanted to see me after getting the scars removed. He's one of the few people in my entire extended family who I'm happy to be related to and isn't a total piece of garbage. He's quite old and his health is deteriorating, so I can't exactly wait years to decide if I want to get this surgery done. My parents' comments about everything they went through, regardless of how little I care about what they want at this point, did make me pause and think. The procedure is quite easy to go through by all accounts, and although I really hate hospitals, I'm sure I'll push through the experience. I've been through far worse. Should I get this procedure done for the sake of my grandfather and my parents, or should I stick to my resolve? It's mostly for my grandfather's sake I'm asking. Edit. Some further information to help you guys better understand my mindset and attachment to my scars. I copied and pasted this from a reply that I made down below. I always wanted them to accept me for who I am. I've given up on that now, and they've never done that. They've always tried to change me, and have put me down every single time I expressed myself in any way, whether it was career-wise or hobbies or anything. So at this point, I'm just not giving them this. The scars, in so many ways, represent who I am and everything they've tried to change. I don't want their approval if they don't give it to me as I am, so I won't get the surgeries done. Also, part of me feels like, if I do meet someone that I want to spend the rest of my life with, how will I know if that person would be cool with me if I had the scars? I don't know. I feel like it's a deep insecurity that I have to get rid of. And also, they do tell a story about me. I don't think about them all the time, only when my parents bring them up because they're the only ones that do so, but on the rare occasion they come up, they remind me of everything I've gone through and overcame. All the childhood bullies, surgeries, etc. Edit 2, since it was asked in the comments, I was born in India, so Asian culture definitely has a hand in the dynamic. But I've been around other Indian/other Asian families, and mine isn't in the mold at all. While the Indian-Asian community does have some work to do when it comes to losing bad parenting practices, my experience is definitely not standard. If the other Indian/Asian families knew the way my family dynamics were, my parents would straight up be shunned. I say this because I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes against the Asian community. In certain cases, it becomes difficult to come out and criticize your community as a minority, because you invariantly may be helping people who don't understand the whole situation spread stereotypes and generalize about you and your people. And in the comments, Hengin says, "They're your scars. If you want them, they're yours to wear and take pride in." I get where your parents are coming from, but honestly, it's your body at the end of the day. They should be equally grateful that all surgeries up until here have gone well, and be grateful that you're happy, despite having to go through it all. While you should respect that they have paid and worked hard to get the money for those, you should also respect yourself. And OP replies, "Thanks. This is the mindset I've had, but sometimes I can be extremely stubborn. Something I no doubt got from my family, so I try to get other people's perspectives. Also, the scars are a hell of a pickup line, lol." Okay, I feel like you're being a teeny bit disingenuous in your reasoning for not getting the last surgery, but you're the one living in your body, so you say what happens to it. And given the fact that you say there's nothing left wrong except a few scars, who cares? Also, I'm sad to say it, but you're right when you say the scars are probably a litmus test for quality people. Your parents, however, are acting like effing lunatics. If that's the hill they want to die on, let them. And OP replies, "So why do you think I'm being ridiculous? I'm genuinely curious and not trying to be confrontational." Only the tiniest bit. And honestly, I'm going to take back the word ridiculous because it's really not fair. I feel like the scars have gotten bound up in a need to rebel against your parents as a symbol, and given what you've written here, rebellion would be perfectly understandable. They are overbearing as hell, as well as a kind of badge of honor, symbolizing what you've gone through. I would just caution you that you don't imbue them with so much meaning that you feel like you have to keep them if you ever change your mind about the surgery in the future. Does that make sense? All that said, you should do exactly as you want to do with regards to the surgery. You may decide that it's more practical to just get it, since you live with your parents and they're threatening to disown you, and times are effing rough at the moment. But whatever you decide right now, do not ever forget that your parents are authoritarian a-holes. And OP replies, damn, yeah, that's actually 100% on the mark there. I very much do want to give them a big FU. And MRSC1880 says, I was in an accident years ago, which left about a third of my body with burn scars. Your parents are absolutely wrong about not being able to find a partner who will accept your scars. They are being way too harsh. But maybe in their opinion, they've spent so much time and money trying to fix you, and they're almost at the finish line. I feel like this would be the end of their 25-year plight to make things right for you. I'm not saying it's right, but just possibly seeing it from a different perspective. Do what you want, it's up to you to decide what's right for you. I wish you all the best. And OP says, I totally get where you're coming from. This is why I made this post. Not to have everyone agree with me, but to get honest answers to see if I was being unreasonably stubborn. Thank you for your candidness. You've given me much to think about. Edit. Also, I'm very sorry to hear about what happened to you. I may not have gone through exactly what you went through, but I can sympathize with some of your experience. I hope you're in a better place now. And now on to the update. After the large argument I had with my parents 3 months ago, about 2 weeks went by before my mother brought it up again and started pestering me into changing my mind. I didn't want to get into another argument, so every time she or my father started speaking about it, I simply mumbled along with, and okay. Their tones when talking about it can be described as calm and almost sweet, but in that unhealthily condescending way. During her rants, my mother often also tells me that a good son would listen to his parents and I shouldn't harass or disrespect them by disagreeing. Today morning, when I went downstairs to get some breakfast, my mother casually told my father to set up a doctor's appointment for me to speak with a surgeon before getting the procedure done. Dumbfounded and flustered, I asked her who gave either one of them permission to do so without my consent. She responded by saying that I had indeed agreed to it last time we talked about it, i.e., during one of her rants. I had completely droned her out at that time, as I often do during her rants, and apparently nodded and mumbled yeah or something, and they had seen that as a green light. I told her on the spot it wasn't going to happen and went upstairs with my breakfast. On a side note, I eat all my meals in my bedroom and spend most of my time there because when I sit down at the dinner table or with my parents, my mother incessantly criticizes me, brings up all the mistakes I've ever made, and recalls all the hurdles she and my father faced in life because I was born with cleft lip. And of course, my personal favorite part is when she talks about how I need to achieve great heights in life so that I can put to shame everyone who spoke ill of her, my father, and me because of my birth defect. About 15 minutes later, my father calls me downstairs, and the duo confronts me. I point out I didn't say yes and how I was just mumbling along, but they don't accept this answer. They pointed out, yet again, that they moved their entire life to the US from India to ensure I had the best medical treatment and life possible. They went on to say that I was being extremely unfair and cruel by saying no, because they've waited since the day that I was born to see my face after it was fully fixed. They also brought up that my grandfather, who's living in India, wanted to see my face after the surgery too. This point particularly hurts when I hear it because, out of everyone in my toxic family, my grandfather is one of the few people who I love and who has been good to me. He has expressed his desire for me to finish the surgeries, but he's always been kind about it and has never made me feel like a bad person. My parents also claimed that my face is holding me back in life. They think that if I get the procedure, I'll have better success in my career and people will treat me better. They said if I don't, no woman would want to marry me. My mother even said that my sister, 17, would have problems finding a husband in the future because of the way I look. I replied by saying I'm happy with my face, and that the only ones who treat me differently because of the way I look is them. I also said that I'd never want to marry anyone who was that shallow either. My father replied by claiming that me not getting the surgery will make the lives of anyone I end up marrying difficult. I told them that it's my face, and whatever happens, I'm the one who has to wake up to it every day and not them. I told them multiple times that I don't care if anyone treats me differently because I genuinely like the way I look. My father then asked me if I'm planning on living in a jungle far away from other people, and then told me that I know nothing. He claimed that he knew better than I did how people treat me. Upon hearing this, I just started laughing at how absurdly stupid, ridiculous, and insulting this statement was. I even angrily pointed out how ridiculous that statement was. He told me that while I may have started noticing how people treated me differently when I was 5 years old, that they have been noticing it since the day I was born. Now, this part is important. They both went on to tell me about how much effort it took to keep me alive when I was younger because of all the health issues I had. How people told me that I was probably going to end up dying because I was a weak baby, etc. They talked about how they, my parents, told them off and raised me to prove everyone wrong. Mind you, my mother was brought to tears during this whole ordeal. Up to this point, I had been sitting there completely numb and exhausted at the same cycle repeating itself, as it had for a few years now. But after seeing their emotions and hearing what they were saying, something clicked. I had an epiphany. I realized just how much they're still scarred from this experience. From their perspective, they need to see this through for their own closure and happiness. Sure, they feed me, kept a roof over my head, and genuinely love me in their own unhealthy and toxic way, but that, minus the toxicity, is the very basic minimum any parent should do. They've done a horrible job of raising me, and I despise them. Even if they woke up tomorrow, did a total 180, and became amazing parents, I still wouldn't want to mend fences with them because they've hurt me too much. I don't want to waste energy hating them, I just want to move away and start my life with their presence in it being non-existent. But I've witnessed how much they've suffered due to the backstabbing, rumor-spreading, toxicity, and bullying people hurled at them. All because of how I was born since I was a little kid. I may know what happened in the past, but I don't remember it because most of it happened when I was a baby. For them, I think my final surgery would help them put an ugly chapter in their life to bed in some twisted way. I should also note that up until this point, I've had the mindset of if they, my parents, don't love and accept me for the way I am, then I don't want their love. And before today, I had perceived their lack of acceptance for my decision as a clear sign that they don't love me for who I am, or even respect me enough as a man to let me make my own choices. I still think both points are true, but today I really understood their reasons for wanting me to complete this procedure. As for me, here's the deal. As odd as it sounds, I genuinely feel attached to these scars. I see them as a symbol of all the ugly things in my life that I've overcome. They're a symbol of my strength, and they're also an amazing litmus test. If I meet a person that treats me badly because of the way I look, I'll be happy because it tells me everything that I need to know about them, and I won't have to waste my time with them. But if I meet someone who treats me the same despite my scars, I'll also be happy because it tells me everything that I need to know about them, and I'll want to keep them around. The funny thing is, I don't even get mistreated by anyone for the way I look. All of that literally ended the day I graduated high school. I'm now a super outgoing and happy person in regular life. The only one who brings up my scars and makes me second-guess my own attractiveness are my own parents. The scars are noticeable, but not even that bad at all. And here's the final, and arguably the biggest, reason I don't want to get my surgery. One of my biggest dreams in life is to fall in love, get married, have a happy and healthy relationship with them, unlike the relationship my parents have with each other, raise amazing kids, unlike the way I and my sister were raised, and break the cycle of abuse in my family. But I'm afraid that if I go through with the procedure, then even if I end up meeting someone, I'll never know whether she'd have ever given me the time of day if I still had the scars. I'm going back and forth between getting the surgery for the sake of my parents and being enraged, humiliated, and hurt by the idea. Part of me wonders if I'll ever be able to look at myself in the mirror the same way again if I cave in. The other parts wonder if I'm being cruel and ungrateful by denying them this. My consultation with a doctor is the end of this month, and I'm sure they think I'm on board with it now. I just feel more anxious and lost than ever, and have no idea what to do. Edit. I should note that I live with them, and while I very much want to move out, I can't afford to do so right now. I've been hunting unsuccessfully for out-of-state jobs, but haven't had any luck so far. Edit 2. Jesus Christ, this blew up. Okay, I want to thank everyone for their kind words. I'll try to respond to as many as I can, but it's too many people, lol. So I've been thinking about everything I've written since last night, and a few things occurred to me. The last round of surgeries I went through were truly brutal, so I'm very hesitant to get even the most simple outpatient procedure, like the cosmetic one, done. Hell, even if I see a needle on TV, my left hand kind of starts shaking a bit out of fear, so I don't want to go through that again. I could, because again this procedure is rather simple as I understand it, and I've been through far worse, but the process was humiliating for me last time, and still to a degree feels humiliating. It feels like I'm admitting to the world, yeah, I'm ugly, so I'll bend my knee and change myself to your standards for acceptance. I don't want people to like me because I conformed to their standards. I want them to like me for who I am. I'm glad I got your perspectives because it made me realize that perhaps I overvalue my scars. The other half of the coin is, I don't want my parents' approval if they don't give it to me for who I am. I've come to realize, based off your comments, that part of me is holding out on this just to spite them and show them they can't control me. I just don't want them to win on this one. I want my decision to be respected because it's my decision. I don't want to be told I'm wrong or they know better or any of that. It's my way of taking autonomy and power/control back in my life. Plus, it's the fact that they don't even respect me enough to accept my decision on my own body. I feel like even if I said yes, I'll be proving them right in some way. Part of me dislikes the idea of being happy if the surgery was a success, because then my face would be a testament of them being right and exerting their influence over such an intimate and permanent part of me. I guess that's something I'll have to address with myself. And regarding me living with my parents, I'm applying for jobs and interviewing, but it's been difficult. I'm not mooching off my family, I help around the house with getting groceries, and I help them pay bills with the money I have. I do as much as I can. Edit 3. I just wanted to say this one last thing. I've spent more time thinking about my scars and questioning my own attractiveness in the past 2 days than I have in years, and that's entirely on my parents. I haven't even noticed the scars in a while till they brought it up, and now it's in my mind that even though my parents love me in their own twisted way, they'll always see my face as ugly until I change it, so that they can feel validated and at peace regardless of what I want. But I've spent so much time fighting them over this on principle that I haven't really allowed myself to consider whether the surgery is good for me, regardless of my parents' wishes, if that makes any sense. I've also realized I'm using the scars as a way to spite them, and I have an unhealthy attachment to them. I'll try to remove everyone else's voices from my head and seriously open myself up to the idea of getting this procedure done, because acting out of spite, pettiness, anger, and hurt is never the right way to make good life choices. Whatever choice I make, it'll be for me, myself, and I. Finally, I'll obviously try to move out ASAP, and I'll be getting therapy regardless of whether the procedure happens or not. Thank you to everyone who commented, and thanks specifically to those who challenged my point of view without harassment and made me broaden my mindset and perspective. G'day there, guys, and that's the end of today's episode. I do hope you enjoyed it and were entertained by today's bloody good content. As always, I want to do a quick shout out and a thank you to all my channel members and Patreon subscribers. Your beautiful faces and names will be up on screen right now. Haven't forgot about you guys. Sorry, I was taking a little break there. So yeah, if you see yourself, give yourself a pat on the back. If you want to be on this screen, there's links down to the description below where you can sign up and help support the channel and all future projects that I'm going to be doing on this one. With all that said, I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to. I'll see you in the next episode, and I do hope you enjoy it. Thank you.